Most Americans who have a health savings account are using it the wrong way. In fact, over 90% of HSA holders are missing out on the biggest benefits these accounts have to offer. They swipe their HSA debit card at the doctor's office, save a little on taxes, and think that's the end of the story. What they don't realize is that an HSA can actually become one of the most powerful wealth building tools available if you know how to use it correctly. In this video, I'm going to show you what makes HSAs so unique, how to qualify in 2025, the mistakes you need to avoid, and most importantly, how to supercharge your account so it becomes more than just a way to pay for medical bills. If you stick with me to the end, you'll understand how to turn even small contributions into serious long-term wealth. And you'll be ahead of 90% of people who have access to this tool but never take advantage of it. If you're someone who wants to take control of your finances and build wealth step by step, you're in the right place. My name is Chris, and this channel is all about financial education that you can actually use. Quick reminder before we dive in, I'm not a financial or tax advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, so always do your own research or consult a professional before making decisions about your money. Let's break it all down. At its core, an HSA or health savings account is a special type of account that you can only open if you're enrolled in a certain kind of health insurance called a high-deductible health plan. Once you qualify, you can contribute money into the account each year. The magic lies in how that money is treated for taxes. Every dollar you contribute reduces your taxable income. That means that you pay less in federal income tax for that year. Then once your money is in the account, it can be invested. While it grows, you don't pay taxes on dividends, on interest, or capital gains. Finally, when you withdraw the money to pay for qualified medical expenses, those withdrawals are completely tax-free. That's why people call it the triple tax advantage. You save on the way in, you save while it grows, and then you save on the way out. Most retirement accounts can only give you two of those benefits. A traditional IRA or 401k lets you deduct your contribution and grow the money tax deferred, but when you withdraw later in life, you owe taxes. A Roth IRA gives you tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals, but you don't get a deduction up front. The HSA is the only account that gives you all three benefits in one package. If you're getting value from the video so far, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the content, and it ensures that you don't miss future videos on building wealth step by step. Before we go further, I want to clear up a point of confusion that comes up constantly. A lot of people confuse HSAs with FSAs, or flexible spending accounts. They're not the same thing. With an FSA, the rule is use it or lose it. You have to spend the money you put in within the plan year, or you risk forfeiting it all. Some plans give you a small grace period or allow you to carry over a little bit, but in general, the money doesn't roll forward very far. An HSA works completely different. The balance rolls over year after year with no expiration date. The money belongs to you and not your employer. It's portable, so if you change jobs or leave your company, you keep your HSA. And because the money keeps rolling over, you can treat it as a long-term account instead of just a spending account. That's the foundation of the strategy we're going to talk about today. So let's get into who actually qualifies to use an HSA this year in 2025. So this year, you must be enrolled in a high-deductible health plan to contribute. For self-coverage, the deductible has to be at least $1,650, and the out-of-pocket maximum cannot exceed $8,300. For family coverage, that deductible must be at least $3,300 with an out-of-pocket maximum of no more than $16,600. If your health plan doesn't meet those requirements, you can't contribute to an HSA. But if it does, here are the limits. This year, you can contribute up to $4,300 for self-only coverage or $8,550 for family coverage. And if you're 55 or older, you're allowed to add an extra $1,000 as a catch-up contribution. One thing to keep in mind is that if your employer contributes to your HSA, that counts towards the limit. So if your company adds $500 to your account, you can only add the remainder up to your personal limit. There are really two main ways people use an HSA. The first is the short-term spending strategy. This is what most people do. They contribute some money, and when they get a medical bill, they swipe their HSA debit card. It lowers their taxable income and it covers the expense with tax-free money. That's really great, but it doesn't take advantage of the long-term potential. The second approach is the long-term investing strategy. With this method, you still contribute to your account, but instead of spending the money in your HSA when you get a bill, you pay that bill out of pocket if you can afford it. You save the receipt and you keep a record. Meanwhile, the money inside your HSA stays invested and continues to grow grow year after year. The IRS does not require you to reimburse yourself right away. As long as the expense happened after you opened the account, you can reimburse yourself years or even decades later. That's the hidden advantage that most people overlook. It allows you to let your money grow for decades while still keeping the ability to withdraw it tax-free whenever you decide to cash in those receipts. Let's walk through a simple example. Imagine you put $4,000 into your HSA this year and invest it into a broad market index fund that averages 7% year over year in the long run. During the year, you get a $700 medical bill. Most people would just pay that bill with their HSA, but if you pay it out of pocket and save the receipt, that $700 inside your HSA stays invested. 30 years later, that original $4,000 has compounded into about $30,000. You still have the ability to reimburse yourself for that $700 expense tax-free, even though decades have passed. That means that one small decision to pay out of pocket and let your HSA money grow gave you not just the reimbursement, but decades of compounding growth. Multiply that strategy over years of contributions, and you're talking about tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars that most people will never see because they spent their HSA too early. This matters because healthcare in retirement is expensive. According to Fidelity's most recent estimate, the average 65-year-old retiring today will need more than $160,000 to cover healthcare costs throughout retirement. For couples, that number can easily be over $300,000. You're going to have to cover those costs somehow. If you withdrew from a traditional 401k or IRA, you'll owe income taxes, but if you've built up an HSA, you can use that account instead and the withdrawals are tax-free. That's the difference between losing a big portion of your retirement savings to taxes and keeping that money in your pocket. Let's cover the common mistakes. The biggest mistake is using HSA dollars for non-medical expenses before the age of 65. If you do that, the amount is taxed as income and will hit a 20% penalty. That penalty alone is enough to wipe out most of the benefits of the account. After age 65, you can use the money for anything you want without paying the penalty. But if it's not for medical expenses, it's taxed like regular income. So yes, you could treat your HSA like a traditional IRA at that point, but ideally you still want to keep it focused on healthcare costs so you can keep the tax-free benefit. Another mistake is contributing too much. If you go over the annual limit, the extra is taxed and hit with a 6% penalty every year until you remove it. The way to fix this is to request a return of the excess from your HSA provider before you file your taxes. And finally, poor record keeping. If you don't save receipts, you can't prove to the IRS that your withdrawal was for a qualified medical expense. No receipt, no tax-free reimbursement. That one's simple, but it's pretty critical. There are two other rules that catch people off guard. The first is called the last month rule. If you're eligible for an HSA on December 1st, the IRS allows you to contribute as if you were eligible for the whole year. But there's a catch. You must remain eligible for the entire following year. If you don't, the extra contribution becomes taxable and penalized. The second involves Medicare. Once you enroll in any part of Medicare, you can't contribute to an HSA anymore. And because Medicare Part A can be applied retroactively for up to 6 months, you need to stop contributing at least 6 months before you apply. Otherwise, you might accidentally contribute when you're no longer eligible. There's also a state level twist. At the federal level, HSAs are always tax advantaged, but not every state plays along. California and New Jersey do not recognize HSAs. That means contributions are after tax for state purposes and the growth is taxable at the state level too. You still get the federal benefits, which are the bigger piece, but it's important to know if you live in those states. Now let's talk about what to do with the money once it's in your account. If you plan to spend the money soon, you should keep it in cash. The market goes up and down and you don't want to sell investments in a downturn just to cover a doctor's bill. But for the long-term strategy, you should invest. Most HSA providers give you access to mutual funds or ETFs, and many people choose the same kinds of low-cost index funds they'd use in a retirement account. Not all providers are created equal though. Some require you to keep a certain amount of money in cash before you can invest. Some charge higher fees, and if your employer's provider isn't great, you can transfer your balance to another HSA provider with better options. Just remember, it's your account and it goes with you if you change jobs. If you want to maximize the long-term strategy, you need a reliable way to keep track of receipts. Think of every medical receipt as a future dollar bill. The IRS requires proof if you want to reimburse yourself years later. The best approach is to create a digital system. So save a photo or scan of every single receipt, label it clearly with the date and the expense, and keep a running log. That way, if you ever get audited or if you want to reimburse yourself years later, you'll have a clean record. So what does this look like over decades? Let's imagine you contribute the maximum every year and invest it in a simple index fund. Over 30 years, you could easily accumulate several $100,000 just in your HSA. That money you can use tax-free for healthcare and retirement, or even for other expenses after 65 if you choose. That kind of cushion can make the difference between a retirement that feels squeezed and one that feels very secure. Here's the bottom line. An HSA is not just a checking account for doctor visits. It's one of the most powerful wealth building accounts available, but only if you use it the right way. Contribute if you qualify, avoid spending it the right way if you can afford to pay out of pocket, keep every receipt, and invest the balance for the long term. If you do that, you'll pull yourself ahead of most people who have an HSA but never realize what it can really do. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't miss future videos on building wealth step by step. And I would love to hear in the comments, do you currently have an HSA? And if so, are you using it more like a spending account or an investment account? I'd love to hear where you guys stand. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.